Hello. Not too many people here yet, but I think the people who are here, I think I owe it to you to get started immediately because time is precious and we don't want to lose a single minute. So, first and foremost, I would like to ask you, do you have any questions or concerns for me? Like, do you have any chapters that you thought were especially challenging or any concepts that you don't really understand or something like that? Stuff that you want to know if it's on the test or not, stuff like that. Now, I'm not hearing. Uh, is it because nobody's talking or is it because I have something wrong with my connection? I think it's just that nobody's talking. So I'm going to assume that if nobody has any immediate questions for me, that what I should do is just jump right in and start working on the things that you're going to be seeing on the school test and the state test. Now, one of the things that uh, there always seem to be a lot of questions about is who needs a license and who doesn't. So let's see if we can go over that into the notes. Now, first we're going to talk about who can do real estate services in New York State and doesn't need a real estate license. I promise you, questions about this are on both school and state tests. So let's talk about who these people are. Now, the first one is that an owner can certainly sell or rent their own real estate. In other words, you can always provide real estate services to yourself. Kind of the same way you can always write a contract for yourself, or you can always represent yourself in court, even if you're not a lawyer. You just can't do real estate services or legal services for somebody else. All right. Now, speaking of law, attorneys can do real estate services and they don't need a license. Okay, now a couple of new people are joining us. So I'm going to repost that information because I don't want people to have missed any information. Attorneys are automatically brokers. The only time a lawyer needs a real estate, when I say RE, I mean real estate, right? Needs a real estate license is if they open a brokerage and hire salespersons. Okay. Number three, we're talking about people who do not need a real estate license. property managers, building supers, and other workers can sell or rent real estate without a license, as long as they work for only one owner. So property managers, building supers, those kinds of people can sell or rent real estate without a license as long as they work for only one building owner. If they work for lots of owners, if they work for more than one owner, they need a real estate license. Okay. People who are appointed by the court. Can do real estate services without a license. So an example would be a court might appoint an executor or an administrator to handle a person's real estate if the person has died. Now, if the executor or the administrator is appointed by the court, they don't need a real estate license. Number 5, government workers. Government workers who are doing their job don't need a license. So an example would be, let's say that you have the city marshal, and the city marshal is evicting somebody. Well, removing somebody from their real estate is definitely a real estate service, but the marshal doesn't need a real estate license because it's part of their government job to do that. Oh, forgive me. I'm just going to check my textbook to see to prompt myself and see if I've forgotten anything. By the way, students sometimes ask, uh, is there a textbook for this course? We are not required, we meaning the school, we're not required in New York State for distance education, meaning online education, to have a textbook. We have one, but we're not required to have it, and we don't require students to buy it. So let me just show you the textbook that I wrote. Now, here's the textbook. What I frequently do is when I write books, I put a picture of myself on the cover so that way, if people are trying to buy a book, they'll have absolutely no doubt that it's me, that I'm the one who wrote the book. So you've got my name and you've also got the picture of me. Now, this book, as you can see, it's very thick, and it also has quite small text. And the reason why is that this book is chock full of information. This book has about twice as much information in it as the course transcript. So I gave you an awful lot of bonus material. So if people are interested in this book, I don't sell it, but I believe booksellers or schools sell it on Amazon. So you can probably get it from RELNY on Amazon. Okay. Now, continuing with who needs a license and who doesn't. Another one who doesn't need a license is tenant associations and co-op boards do not need a license, nor do members of those groups. Now, there's another one that a lot of people are not aware of, and a lot of people are not aware that a salesperson, a licensed salesperson or broker, is legally allowed to arrange commercial mortgages in New York State, but they can't do residential. To do residential mortgages, a person needs a mortgage license or registration. That's because of consumer protection. Now, generally speaking, the law in our state is that we have a lot of consumer protection for ordinary people who are getting homes or something like that. But for commercial, we don't have anywhere near the amount of protections, because the philosophy is that people who are doing commercial real estate are they're professionals, they're well trained, they know what they're doing, they do it all the time. I'll give you an example. The average person lives in 11 homes in their whole entire life, and that includes when they're a little kid. The average commercial broker or commercial investor, in their career, they do hundreds or maybe even thousands of transactions. So it's something that they do all the time, and they know what they're talking about. Residential people don't really get a lot of experience, don't really know what they're doing. The average person, I believe, who does buy a home owns 2.5 homes in their entire lifetime. So doing residential sales and rentals is just not something that people do. So that's why we have such serious consumer protection in residential and not so much in commercial. Now, I have a question for you. My dog walker. Okay, here's my dog right here. Okay, that's my dog. And I have a professional dog walker. Can my dog walker do a commercial mortgage for me? Like, no freaking way, right? Because you have to have some kind of license to do a commercial mortgage. You have to either have a real estate license or a mortgage license. So an ordinary person like my dog walker, who doesn't have any kind of license, is not allowed to arrange a residential or a commercial mortgage. We, salespersons and brokers, are allowed to arrange commercial mortgages, but not residential. People who are licensed, duly licensed as mortgage brokers, they can do any kind of mortgage. All right, so now that we know all this, let's see if we can explore what are some of the questions that you're going to see. Which of these people is exempt from the requirement to hold a real estate license? Okay, and I'm going to give you choices. All right, so your choices are a commercial mortgage broker, B, property manager for many owners, C, lawyer who doesn't hire salespersons, or D, a tenant relocator. Okay, the answer is absolutely correct. The answer is C, the lawyer. Answer is C, the lawyer. That is always on the test. Now, I'd like to point out that some wrong answers that you may see is a tenant relocator and a real estate auctioneer do need a real estate license. Because a tenant relocator is just a salesperson or a broker who brings people to New York from other cities or other countries or something. So they need a license. The auctioneer they're offering real estate for sale, but instead of offering the properties one at a time, they're offering a whole bunch of them to a whole bunch of people at once in an auction setting, but you still need a license. As a matter of fact, in my class over the years, I've had quite a few auctioneers, because I've had auctioneers who they already would auction like art or something like that, or antiques or something, but they wanted to start auctioning real estate. So they would take this class that we're all in together. They would take this class in order to get a license. Okay, now sometimes they're going to say to you, who is exempt from the real estate license? And other times they're going to say, who's not exempt? So you have to read the question very carefully to see whether they're asking, do they need a license or do they not need a license? Okay, so who does not need a real estate license? A court appointee, an auctioneer, a attorney who hires salespersons, or D, manager for many landlords. Who does not need a real estate license? A court appointee, an auctioneer. Thank you very much. Okay, so the answer is indeed, the answer is A, the court appointee. All right, so now that we have a lot more people here, I would like to ask again, does anyone have any particular concerns? Do you have any particular areas that you felt were unclear? Or do you have any things that you found confusing in the course? Or any things that you are concerned whether they're going to be on the test or not? And if nobody has anything, then I'm just going to keep firing questions at you.
Can I ask one question? Is there a negative marking on the final test?
I'm sorry,
For
is there going to be any what?
negative marking for the wrong questions?
What do you mean by negative marking?
Suppose if I get a question wrong, will I lose the marks which I already earned with the right answers?
I don't think I'm understanding the question. There's 75 questions. Actually, now there's 77 questions. Okay, there's 77 questions on the test. If you get them all right, then you score 100. If you get a question wrong, each time you get a question wrong, you're not going to get those points.
Okay, so you're not getting penalized for wrong answer. So we can guess if we are in doubt, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I just didn't understand the question at first. As a matter of fact, I had a guy in my class who went downtown to take the state test, and he ran out of time. Now, that doesn't usually happen to people because they usually give you an hour and a half for 77 questions. So you really have more than 1 minute per question, which is usually pretty good. But for some reason, this guy ran out of time. And he had like 12 questions at the end of the test that he didn't even answer, didn't even read. So what the guy did is he remembered what I had told the class, which is I had told the class that if you have absolutely no idea what the answer to a question is and you have to guess, for some reason, test writers usually make the right answer be C. So what this guy did, this student of mine, is he answered C to all 12 of the remaining questions, and he passed. So the most popular answer for test writers is C. The second most popular answer for test writers, anybody know? Go ahead, Suraj.
I think answer A.
Interestingly, it's B. And I don't know why, because when I write tests, I tend to favor A and D. But studies have shown that test writers usually gravitate to C and to a lesser extent to B. Another really good trick is that if you have to guess about something, usually the test writers make it, like if it's a math question, usually the test writers make it so that the answer is not the lowest number and it's not the highest number. It's something in the middle. Another thing is that if you get a choice and one of the answers is, okay, let me give you an example. Who needs a real estate license? Okay, so we know the tenant relocator needs it. We know the person who does commercial mortgages needs it. You know that a property manager for several owners needs it. And then they oftentimes will make D be all of these. Studies have shown that all of these is usually the right answer. All right, so if you see choices that are all of these, none of these, something like that, it's usually the right answer. All right, what else have we got?
Hey, Kristen, sorry, I wanted to jump
Yeah,
in real quick.
okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where everyone else is progress on this call, but I'm still trying to pass your course final exam.
Mhm.
Um, and and admittedly, I've been coming back to the course materials and stuff because a few months ago I was gonna take it, but then other things came up and whatever, and I'm trying to put in practices as far as to certain sections that I should look at, and that would make sense in order to pass the course final. And I know this is kind of a broad question and not very specific as far as topics, but I guess in yours, from your standpoint, what would you suggest as far as sections in your course that I should be looking at in order to kind of get through?
Well, the way Department of State requires it is that we are required to have one question per hour of the course. So, for example, if for every hour that you do of agency, you've got to have at least one agency question. For every hour of the course that's fair housing, you've got to have at least one fair housing question. Now, an easy way to figure it out then, to figure out like what you should really concentrate on studying, is to look at what are the longest chapters with the most hours in them, right? So the longest chapters with the most hours in them are agency, which is a real monster of a chapter at the very beginning, and commercial. Uh, commercial is another 10-hour course. That one is chapter 16 towards the end. The other one that the state really loves, and so does the school, is fair housing. And the reason why is that they just added, fair housing used to be, I believe, 4 hours of study, and they just added 2 more hours of the implicit bias and the cultural competence. And the state added like so much new fair housing material. So I would say that the most important chapters, and I'll type it for you, okay? So in my opinion, uh, in my opinion, the most important chapters for the test are agency, fair housing, and commercial. Now, let me tell you why commercial is so important. Until the year 2008, the salesperson course was only 45 hours. And so they almost doubled the length of the course in the year 2008. And one of the things that people had been complaining about is they had been complaining that the real estate licensing course was way too concentrated on residential and didn't have enough commercial material in it. So when they added the extra 30 hours, 10 of them were commercial. So they put in a lot of commercial material. And that makes sense because you know what happened to me? Uh, when I got my real estate license, it was before 2008 when the course was only 45 hours long. And so when I got my license, there was almost nothing about commercial. And when I wanted to go into commercial real estate and I wanted to learn something, I went and took a course at NYU uh, just to learn about commercial. I wanted to learn how to do commercial math. I wanted to learn about commercial concepts. The course wasn't required. I took the course voluntarily because I wanted the knowledge. So now Department of State has corrected that, and there's a lot of concentration about commercial. There's concentration about commercial math, commercial concepts, types of commercial properties, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, another thing I will tell you is that a great way to study for the test is that the way we structured the course in our school is that we made it so that the questions, like, you know, as you're taking the course, it stops pretty frequently and you have like lecture tests and quizzes and stuff like that. We made it so that the questions in the final exam are based on those lecture questions. So when you're doing the course, please be sure that you really understand the questions and know how to answer them, because when you get to the end of the course and take the final, you're going to see like a whole lot of those questions again. Another thing we did is we tried to make the school test as much like the state test as possible. And the reason for that is that what is Department of State going to ask you about on the test? They're going to ask you about stuff that they consider it important for you to know. So at our school, are we going to put unimportant questions on the test? Of course not. We're going to put the stuff that Department of State considers important enough to test us on. So you will see that school and state test tend to be fairly similar. I think the main difference between school and state test is that the state test has a lot less math. The school test has a lot more math. So if you're a person who doesn't like math too much, then you'll probably find the state test to be easier.
And then you mentioned like the answer choices or like most common choices. You said for yours, you said you usually do A and
Yeah, for me, but I have to correct that tendency. And so I was very fastidious about randomizing them. So we have essentially equal numbers of A's, B's, C's, and D's.
Right.
Okay. I think the state test isn't randomized. And I think the reason it's not randomized is because it wasn't like there was one person who did it. It was written by committees of people. All right. Let's see what we can accomplish here. Okay. I have a question that has cropped up on the state test before. And to tell you the truth, if I took the state test, I would get it wrong. Why? Because it is my personal opinion that Department of State is not asking the question properly. Now, you don't have to listen to me, but National Association of Realtors wrote a whole article about this question. So let me give you the question and we'll go through it. Now, a salesperson visits a homeowner, but the homeowner does not hire them to sell the property. Later, the same salesperson comes back with a buyer client. The salesperson remembers that the homeowner had told them that their price was very negotiable and they were in a hurry to sell. because the homeowner had money trouble. Now, they're telling you this little story, and here's the question. The salesperson cannot share this info with the buyer due to which fiduciary duty? Okay, and I'm going to give you choices. So the choices are accountability, reasonable care, confidentiality, or disclosure. Okay, that was a long one, so let me read it again, okay? A salesperson visits a homeowner, but the homeowner does not hire them to sell the property. Later, the same salesman comes back with a buyer client. The salesperson remembers that when they met the homeowner before, the homeowner had told them that the price was very negotiable and they were in a hurry to sell because the homeowner had financial trouble. The salesperson cannot share this info with the buyer due to which fiduciary duty? Okay, yep. So the answer is confidentiality. Here's what is the problem with this question. I think that all four of them are wrong, because you know why? The salesperson doesn't owe any fiduciary duties to the homeowner because they have no relationship with the homeowner. They don't have any kind of contract, any kind of handshake, any kind of spoken agreement, nothing. We owe fiduciary duties to our clients, not to like every single person that we meet in the world. What we owe to every single person that we meet in the world is honesty. But we don't owe confidentiality to every person that we have a conversation with about real estate. Now, National Association of Realtors wrote a whole article about this. And National Association of Realtors' whole article said that the salesperson owes no fiduciary duties to the homeowner, but they do owe fiduciary duties to the buyer. So when the question says they're not allowed to share the info with the buyer, National Association of Realtors says they have to share the information with the buyer, because with the buyer, they do have a duty of disclosure. They have to tell, disclose means you tell, they have to tell the buyer any important information that they know about the sale. So although this question, I think, is based on a mistaken assumption, it's kind of easy to tell that the answer is going to be confidentiality, because if they're naming a bunch of duties, which is the duty that says you can't tell people stuff? Confidentiality. All right. So the answer is definitely going to be confidentiality. Oh, here's one. Real estate owned by two or more unmarried people and can be transferred to someone else in a will is called it's called which type of ownership? And here are your choices. Severalty, entirety, common, or D, joint. Well, I can tell you the reasoning. If there's two or more owners, then it can't be severalty. Severalty is one owner. If they're not married, then it can't be entirety. Entirety is ownership by a legally married couple. So now we've narrowed it down to, is it tenants in common or joint tenants? The difference between joint tenants and tenants in common, anybody know? Is what happens when one of the owners dies. Okay, so the answer is C. In common can be transferred by a will. Joint is a situation in which the co-owner automatically inherits the real estate, regardless of what is in the will. Okay? Forgive me, I'm just checking because I think somebody asked me a question in the chat. Oh, I guess not. Okay. What is the highest type of ownership in real estate? Life estate, leasehold, fee simple, or qualified fee? This is always on the test. Thank you. Fee simple is the answer. It is standard, normal ownership, which we see almost all the time. Here's another one. Unless it is a lesser estate, which kind of freehold is it? Life estate, leasehold, fee simple, or qualified fee? The answer is fee simple freehold. So that would be C again. Because fee simple is a full estate with all the legal rights of ownership. The others are lesser estates because the owner gets less legal rights. All right. So whenever you see them, whenever you see the test mentioning a full estate, it's going to be fee simple. Oh, I've got a hard one for you. At least I think it's hard. Which of these is true of liens? Okay. Which of these is true of liens? Related to debt, involuntary, all liens are encroachments, or all encumbrances are liens. You know what they're doing to you here. They're trying to mess you up with all those E words, all those words that start with E. Thank you. Dylan is absolutely right. The answer is A. A lien is a debt attached to a piece of real estate. What is a deed? A deed is a conveyance. A deed is an insurance policy. A deed is a written promise, or a deed is a contract. What's the answer? A deed is a conveyance of title. And it's a conveyance because a conveyance is something that moves. So for example, like if you go to the airport and they have those conveyor belts that like your suitcase comes out on, okay, they call it a conveyor belt because it's moving the suitcases around. So a deed is a conveyance of title. It moves ownership, title from one person or company to another. Now, I'm feeling pretty good about the questions that I'm giving you, and I'll tell you why. People seem to be thinking about them, and people seem to not find them too easy, because I don't want to give you easy questions that are going to waste your time. I want to give you hard ones that you have to think about and study and remember for when you take the school and state tests. What is it called when certain closing costs are allocated or distributed between seller and buyer? And your choices are what is it called when certain closing costs are allocated or distributed between seller and buyer? Is it partition, proration, easement, or conveyance? Yes, absolutely right. The answer is indeed proration. Okay. What do you call a leasehold tenant's right to uninterrupted use of the leased premise? Now, what I think is confusing about that question is not necessarily that it's so hard, but just like nobody says leased premise, like nobody really talks that way. So the way a lot of this stuff is written can be very confusing and something that you have to think about for a minute. So let's talk about what the choices are, okay? So the choices are oh, I meant encroachment. I forgot the C in encroachment. So the choice is encroachment with a C. Okay, the answer is quiet enjoyment. The answer is quiet enjoyment. Now, oftentimes when you get a lease, it doesn't actually use the words quiet enjoyment in the lease, but it is assumed under New York state law that a leasehold tenant, that the right of quiet enjoyment is implied in the lease, even if it doesn't say anything. I'll give you an example. I was visiting a friend of mine one day, and my friend is going, I haven't slept for 3 days. And I go, really? Why? And he goes, because my neighbors downstairs have been having like a 3-day long party. And he goes, what can I do about it? And I said, well, you have the right in your lease to quiet enjoyment. And he goes, I don't know what that means. And it doesn't say those words in my lease. No, it's understood that tenants have the right to quiet enjoyment. So quiet enjoyment means that they are not subject to disturbances, annoyances, danger, disruption, and so forth. They're allowed to enjoy the real estate with peace and quiet. All right, let's see what else we got. Oh, here's one that I think is a hard one. What are amounts paid to a lender at loan origination to cover the difference between the market interest rate and the lower contract rate of the promissory note? Whoa, like I think the way that is worded is really hard. So loan origination is going to be when the mortgage starts. All right. And what is an amount that a borrower would pay to the bank lender when the mortgage starts to cover the difference between the market interest rate, which could be like maybe 6% APR, or the lower interest rate that's going to be written into their mortgage, the promissory note of their mortgage? What would be the amount that a borrower would pay for that? Another way to ask this would be, another way to ask this would be, what does a borrower pay to a bank to get lower monthly interest rate on their mortgage? Okay, so the answer is indeed points, and they call them, answer is discount points, because the borrower is paying points to get a discount on interest. There's no such thing as amortization points. Okay, so that one's got to be wrong. What do we call the right of government to take private property for public use? Latches, spot zoning, eminent domain, or escheat? What's the answer? Answer is eminent domain. I actually saw a TV show today about eminent domain. One of my favorite TV shows is I love courtroom dramas. So one of my favorite TV shows is Bull, which is it's a TV drama, like an hour-long TV drama about a guy whose name is Jason Bull, like the animal, and he is a courtroom consultant. So they had a thing today that it was about eminent domain. What happened was the city government wanted to build a big office building, and they came in and they wanted to do eminent domain for this old guy's restaurant. And the old guy was so determined to stay in his restaurant that he actually chained himself to the building. And the city had to take him to court to enforce the eminent domain. I can email the chat to everyone at the end of the class, but what I'd like to ask you is if you give me the your email address now, it makes it harder for me to find it at the end. So I'd appreciate it if everybody would just give it to me at the end. Now, remember, I don't have to email it to you. I can think of 3 ways to get the chat, okay? One way is that at the bottom of your chat screen are those 3 little dots for more. And if you click on the 3 little dots for more, one of the choices is save chat, and it downloads immediately to your computer. All right. Another way you could do it is you could just highlight the entire chat and copy paste it into a document. The third way is you could screenshot the chat. All right. So, and then of course, the fourth way, the one I like least, is having me email it to everybody, because it's very time consuming for me to find everybody's email address and send out the emails. And give them like the full chat and everything like that. It's a little time consuming for me. So if you are capable of downloading the chat with the save chat function, that would make it a lot easier. Now, everybody is acting like the class is over, and I guess it is, because it is after 7 o'clock, and I'm told this is supposed to be a 1-hour class. And I used to think, well, I'm going to do longer classes because then everybody will be happy and everybody will learn stuff. And I discovered that the students don't really like it, because people want to be able to plan their evening. And they want to say it's a 1-hour class. It goes for 1 hour. We have 1 hour of content. So I have been making the classes a little shorter than I used to. I guess you kind of live and learn, you know? Now, the school has given us a link to Facebook and asked us to go to Facebook and give the school, like follow the school or give it good reviews or something like that. Now, I've already done that because I really love this school. This is like the best school that I've ever taught for, and I've taught for quite a few schools. And so I've already gone there. I can only write like 1 review. Okay. it's up to everybody else to put in your 2 cents. So let me give you the link. That's the link to our school, RELNY online. All right. Does anybody have any other questions for me before we wrap up?
I have one more question. I feel like I've taken some because I have tried the final course exams, some of the practice exams, and I feel like I always see like what the differences are between like a condo and then a condop. I feel like I always get those like mixed up
Oh, okay.
pertaining to those. I don't know if we have
I
time,
do
but
not know why Department of State even makes us learn about condops, because there's only 300 of them in the whole freaking city. There's like a million buildings in New York City, and only 300 of them are condops. So I don't know why they make us learn about it and why they ask us about it, but they do. All it is that most buildings in New York City, like the street level floor, is going to be commercial. It's going to be like a store or a medical office or something like that, right? Upstairs, you usually have apartments. So a condop is when the ground floor is a condo, which they sell to a store, and the upstairs apartments are co-ops, which they sell to ordinary people. Okay, so a condop is a building that is part condo, part co-op. And typically the way that it's done is that the ground floor store will be the condo and the apartments upstairs will be the co-ops.
okay.
All right. So now is your golden opportunity. If people need me to email the chat, now is your golden opportunity to give me your email address in the chat, and I will do so. And I have I have several of them here. So if you don't give me your email address, I am going to assume that you don't really need it, that you were able to just save the chat. Oops. All right. I have just put all of the emails at the bottom of the chat here. So if I have forgotten anyone, please let me know. Okay, I'm going to hit save chat my own self. And I'm going to go ahead and go online and email the chat transcript to everyone who asked me for it. All right. Well, thank you everyone for being with me and with my little Bony Maroney. That's my little Bony Maroney. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. And
Thank you
bye,
so much.
Maroni.
I'm listening. Okay, then I'm going to go. I'm going to leave the Zoom on for a few minutes, so that way, if you want to save the chat, or you want to go back and look at it again, or you want to talk to each other or something like that, you can. Sometimes students like to organize like little study groups together or something like that. All right, so I'm here every Wednesday from 6 to 7, and so is Boney Maroney. I do not know how she knows when the class is over. She always wakes up when the class is over. I don't know how she knows. But anyway, she has some kind of ESP, and she always manages to figure out when the class is over. So I'm going to turn off my camera and my microphone, but I will leave Zoom on for a few more minutes. Okay? So thank you, everybody. Thank you for being with me.